Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native Chapter 59. Okay, one last check. Jelsai stood up and patted her pockets. She wasn't wearing her normal clothes, and the different weight distribution of her new outfit kept throwing her off. Toril had put the clothes together, a human-style outfit that managed to ride the line between proper feminine sensibilities and the weird backwards style of human clothing. A one-piece sundress in a vibrant red that dipped low enough to show plenty of cleavage, paired with black leggings and accented by a short black coat. Sensible shoes. She had her Omnipod and her ID, but no badge and no pistol. Well, not her normal pistol. Just a small backup gun she could tuck in a pocket. She didn't need it, but carrying a piece was just habit at this point. Satisfied that she wasn't missing anything, Jelsai grabbed Stace's gifts from their home on the jump seat next to her and exited the small shuttle into the brisk earth air. Stace had been excited about spring, but it was still unbearably chilly. This damn coat might look good and help accent her less than spectacular chest, but it wasn't keeping the cold out. She jogged her way into the hotel and made her way towards the medical wing and Stace's apartment, slowing and taking a moment to make sure nothing was out of place and she wasn't short of breath before she went in. Askel had a smile for her as she entered the medical office. He was using a medical sprayer, putting some sort of numbing agent on a Marine's swollen ankle, and the woman's jealous glare just earned her a smirk from the interior agent. It must be obvious why she was here. Stace is getting ready, you can go right in. He's been prepping all morning. Askel offered her another smile and Jelsai's smirk turned into a nervous grin. She opened the door and the smell of home-cooked food wafted out into the medical room. Jelsai stopped for a moment and just savored the flavors filling the air. She had a small snack before coming for her date since she didn't want to seem like a slob, but her mouth was immediately watering in anticipation. You better go in. That smell is going to attract Marines like blood bugs to a sporting event. Jelsai nodded to the helcom, took a breath less to enjoy the smell and more to steady herself, and entered Stace's apartment. I'm here. Nice job, Jelsai. Voice cracking like a 10-year-old. Could she sound any more nervous? Thankfully, the noises from the kitchen seemed to cover it and her second attempt sounded a lot better. Stace, I'm here. I'm in the kitchen. Jelsai decided to take it as an invitation and peeked in. She took a moment to stare. Stace was facing away from her, working at a counter, and he was standing. He was taller than she had pictured, broad at the shoulder and looking remarkably healthy. He was also shirtless, wearing nothing but a pair of shorts. His prosthetic was visible, a simple shield metal rod with a shoe and articulated ankle on one side and a cup on the other that his stump fit into. After a moment of staring, Jelsai turned around. Stace. You need to get dressed. It hurt to say it. She wanted to stare, to step past the threshold and wrap her arms around him, press her bare chest against the smooth muscles of his back, but no. She was not going to take advantage of her friend. She was going to do this right. Oh damn, sorry. Lost track of time. Jelsai averted her eyes, or at least tried to, and turned away as Stace hobbled past her. He seemed to be leaning on any surface he could get his hands on as he moved, getting balance from the counter, then the table, then the desk until finally he grabbed a crutch that wrapped around his right forearm and used it to slowly limp his way through the living room and into his bedroom. Do you need any help? Hopefully that sounded more confident than it felt. She wished desperately for him to say yes, that she would have an excuse to follow him into his bedroom where. No, Jelsai. Do this right. Don't pressure him. She needed to take her time. Goddess, she hadn't even given him his gifts yet. No, it will just take a couple minutes. I'm still not quite used to getting pants working with this thing. Just relax for a bit. Jelsai could hear him clearly through the half-open doorway. He had thrown his arm out to swing it closed behind him, but the door hadn't quite made it there. She stepped up quietly to the gap in the door and, with a trembling hand, grabbed the knob and pulled it shut. When the human finally emerged from his room, Jelsai took a moment to stare. He was dressed well in black slacks that completely hid his prosthetic and a dark green wide-collared buttoned shirt that tapered in slightly at the waist and flared at the wrists. His only jewelry was a necklace, a pair of interlocked gold and silver rings on a thin silver chain. His shaggy hair was combed back and his short-trimmed beard framed his face, accenting his cheekbones. Those mismatched eyes looked her up and down and his cheeks began to turn pink. He was blushing. "Wow, you look great." Stace smiled nervously at her. "I don't think I've ever seen you dressed up without your big coat. I don't think I've ever seen you vertical." "Goddess damn it," Jelsai. Why would she say something so stupid? The words just sort of fell out of her mouth as soon as they popped into her head. Thankfully, Stace just laughed. "Yeah, it's a new look." He lifted his crutch for a moment, showing off his ability to stand. "I don't think it will catch on." "Well, that outfit looks amazing on you. I love the blouse." Stace's face went from pink to bright red. Even his ears were changing color. "Thank you." He cleared his throat into his free hand. "Aang picked it out for me. He said my other clothes made me look like a vagrant." An awkward silence ensued before Jelsai remembered the two long boxes in her hands. "Oh. I brought you something. I know you're old-fashioned, I mean you, here." She thrust the boxes forward and Stace took them gently one-handed, placing them down on the desk so he could lean against it while he pulled off the lid of the first box. "Irises? These are beautiful." Stace was examining the purple and white flowers carefully as he pulled the bundle free. He leaned forward and took an experimental sniff, a corner of his mouth tweaked up in a smile. "They are called bearded irises. I thought they suited you." "Because I have a beard." Stace took a moment to turn his head and grin at her. Jelsai felt the heat rise to her face in response and she turned her eyes to look elsewhere. "Maybe." Stace brushed past her and she had a moment of confusion as he made his way into the kitchen, only for him to come back with a glass jar half filled with water. He carefully arranged the irises, right arm trembling, and placed them on the desk where they were easily visible from the whole room. Jelsai couldn't help her grin as she watched him open the second box. She had done her research on human courtship and had spent far too many credits on the box of tiny brown candies, but watching Stace's face light up at seeing the chocolates was worth it. He leaned forward and gave the box a sniff, clearly delighted. "You know, it's funny. I spent so long out by myself that I forget that I can actually get stuff like this now. I haven't had chocolate like this in a long time." He picked a piece out and popped it in his mouth, savoring the taste with obvious glee. Stace picked up the box by a corner and offered it to Jelsai, who held up a hand to decline. "I may have bought myself a couple of boxes at the same time. To make sure it was good enough, of course. You know." Stace nodded as he closed the box, an adorable fake expression of seriousness on his face. "You always need to check for quality." Flowers and chocolates. Stace felt a strange mix of guilty and elated at the gifts. This was a date, his first real date he had been on since Daniel died, and the gifts were bringing back a lot of memories. Part of it felt like he was somehow betraying his husband's memory in a way that being with Ellora and Aang hadn't. Like this was something special that only they had shared. Stace made his way to the kitchen, Jelsai in tow, and finished packing the large wicker basket. He had spent part of the previous night and the entire morning cooking, partially to work through the nervousness and partially because he wanted to do this properly. When Jelsai asked him out for a lunchtime picnic, he had offered to cook. It made it seem more collaborative, and Stace wasn't really comfortable with being passive and just accepting things. Once the basket was packed, Jelsai reached over his shoulder and plucked it from the table. He thanked her with a smile and grabbed another, smaller basket with his left hand. "I can carry both." Jelsai reached for it and Stace pulled it back, out of reach. The large woman had a clear look of confusion on her face. "Please, let me at least carry something. I'm not an invalid." She must have understood his feelings, because she nodded with a soft smile. "All right, but let me know if you need help. I don't want floor grit in our lunch." "Yes, m." Those two words seemed to set the interior agent off, her entire face from cheeks to ears turning a deep blue. With that, Stace followed the large woman out of the apartment. They walked out of the hotel and to a small shuttlecraft. Unlike the bulky and boxy designs Stace had seen before, this one seemed smoother, sleeker. The purple shield metal hull shone in the morning light. The interior was impressive as well, though understated. The majority of the 8-meter-wide main cabin was open space, a few seats along the edges, everything silver and chrome with gold accents. No windows marred the smooth walls or arched ceiling. If the decor was human, he would have called it Art Deco circa 1930. It reeked of wealth and style. "So, where are we going? Do you trust me?" Stace smirked at Jelsai. This had become something of a running joke. "Of course, Jel. You're going to love it, just take a seat and relax." They stowed the baskets and Stace took a seat next to Jelsai. She was smaller than Ellora, but even then, being with a female Shilvati somehow made him feel frail and delicate. After a few moments, he felt an arm gently wrap behind his head, hand on his shoulder. It felt comfortable and Stace found himself leaning over slightly so that he was tucked in the crook of Jelsai's arm. "How long for the flight? When do we lift off?" "We're already in the air." "Really?" Stace hadn't felt anything aside from the subtle rumble of engines that had been going when they first boarded. "Yep. We should be at our picnic spot in just a few minutes." The arm around his shoulders tightened slightly, possessively holding him against Jelsai's ample chest, and Stace felt some lingering anxiety drain from his body. He had been worried, stepping into a shuttle to who knows where with a woman he didn't know all that well, but Jelsai's obvious nervousness about their date was reassuring. It made him feel less awkward knowing she felt the same way. We've arrived." Stace started at the noise from the intercom. The thought of there being a pilot had somehow slipped his mind. He gently extricated him from Jelsai, grabbed his crutch, and started moving to the hatch. "No need for that, Stace." He turned back to see Jelsai spreading a red and white gingham cloth down on the open space in the center of the shuttle. "Believe me, you wouldn't want to open it anyway." She placed a couple of soft-looking pillows down, then gestured for Stace to come closer. "Jel, what's going on?" He was sure the nervousness in his voice was plain. He trusted Jelsai, didn't he? "Just lay down next to me and look up. You aren't going to want to miss this." She laid down on the cloth, head on one pillow, and beckoned to him again. Getting down on the floor was a pain, but soon he was flat on his back. Jelsai's hand reached out and grasped his hand, holding tight. "This never gets old." The curve of the roof seemed to crack in the middle, a hidden seam exposed, but there was no scent of fresh air. Instead there was a thin strip of black and blue. It widened, little by little, and as it did Stace felt his jaw go slack, eyes wide in wonder. The earth hung there, huge and beautiful. Swirls of white clouds covered the greens and browns of North America. It was quite possibly the single most amazing thing Stace had ever seen. Jelsai said something, but Stace didn't even try to comprehend it. He did notice the effect, though, as his body suddenly felt lighter. He wasn't weightless, but he suddenly felt delightfully buoyant. "Stace? You there, Stace?" "Huh?" He couldn't pull his eyes away, but he did manage to focus on the words a little. "Yeah. Gravity is at about 1/10 of Schill standard if you want to bounce around a little. I find that any less than that makes me nauseous, and we do still have a picnic to eat." Stace could hear the pride in her voice. If she had been intending to blow his mind, she had certainly succeeded. "This gel, I don't know what to say. It's wonderful." Stace could feel tears in his eyes at the beauty of what he was seeing. Gelsai's hand tightened on his for a moment, then let go. He felt one of her hands run softly through his hair, but he couldn't look away. Soft breath tickled his ear as she spoke softly. "I'll get everything unpacked for our lunch. You just sit back and enjoy yourself." Well, she could definitely call that a success. Gelsai had been worried that Stace would panic, freak out at hanging up in space and looking down at his home. She decided to gamble on it, and the amazed expression on Stace's face, eyes bright with tears and mouth hanging slack, proved that she had won big. She was going to have to thank Toril for her suggestion that Stace would probably appreciate a new experience over a fancy gift. She bounced her way over to the 2 baskets stowed under the seats and brought them back to the cloth laid out on the deck, careful to make sure nothing bounced free. At 1/10 gravity things stayed where you put them, but momentum became a concern. Thankfully Gelsai had a lot of practice at this. It might go against her professional investigator persona, but turning down the gravity and bouncing around was fun. Just as Gelsai had surprised Stace with the location, she didn't know anything about the food he prepared. She was surprised to find that there was an important reason for the 2 baskets. The larger one contained hot food, carefully stowed with warming pads to make sure nothing got cold. The second, smaller basket contained some cold pads, a couple bottles of wine, a container of cut fruit, and some sort of pie or cake. Out came plates, napkins, roasted vegetables. Stace had really outdone himself. Everything looked homemade and delicious, even if Gelsai couldn't identify any of it. Gelsai looked over at Stace, but he still hadn't moved. He was just staring up at the earth, a big dopey smile on his face. "Stace? Come on, the food's going to get cold." She bounced over to him and reached down. After a moment of coming to his senses, Stace grasped her arm with his left, and with a small tug he went flying up off the floor. He let out an adorable surprised squeak and flailed for a moment before she caught him, arms wrapping around his torso and easily holding him up off the ground so they could see eye to eye. This was the moment. Their lips met gently, the kiss starting off chaste before her tongue slipped inside. He was hot and his tongue seemed impossibly soft against hers as she explored his mouth. She wanted this moment to last forever, to lay him back down and climb on top of him, but no. Gelsai had her plan and she was going to stick to it. Take things slow. With a truly impressive effort, she released the kiss and let Stace's feet hit the ground. He looked positively stunned, so she led him back towards the food. "You're going to have to tell me what you made. I have no idea what any of this food is, aside from looking delicious." That seemed to knock Stace out of his stupor. He was proud of the spread he had cooked. He tried to crouch down, but overcompensated for the lower gravity and found himself sprawled out on the floor. Gelsai pulled him up again and held him steady while he made himself comfortable, laughing all the while. "Those are pasties. They are a sort of hand-held pie full of meat and vegetables." He opened each container as he spoke, and delicious smells quickly filled the cabin. "This is Mexican sweet corn, this is a chicken and bacon pasta salad, some Hawaiian sweet rolls, and that's watermelon. I went with a sweet white wine to go with it, and for dessert there's a chocolate drizzled cheesecake." Stace was clearly pleased, and Gelsai could see why. She had paid hundreds of credits for meals that didn't look this good. This must have taken you hours. Stace nodded. Worth it, though. He handed Jelsi a plate and the pair dug in. So, how did the date go? Sammy was bouncing on the balls of their feet, waiting at the door as Elora came into the observatory. I think it went well. He's looked mildly concussed ever since he got back. She tried not to sound bitter. She should be happy that her guy had fun, not jealous that a noble made her feel inferior. Where did they end up going? Aang said it was a surprise. Elora sighed. Orbit. Oh my gosh. Sammy's eyes were wide as saucers, dark skin flushed even darker with excitement. If I fuck her, do you think I could go? Sammy. You own a spaceship. When it gets here in a couple days you can go there whenever you want. Oh. Sammy took a moment to think about it. Damn it, now I'm all wound up. They looked up at Elora with those huge sparkling green eyes. Do you wanna fuck? I might not be able to take you to orbit, but I guarantee you'll see stars. Elora guffawed, then picked Sammy up and tossed them over a shoulder. The little human whooped and cheered the entire walk up to the bedroom. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode and do all the other YouTube stuff, visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.